Good morning, everybody. So I'm going to get political with you this morning. Is that okay? Give you a chance to run out before I get started. Because I want to talk about this gospel today is so appropriate for our times today, especially in an election year. Because a lot of times I hear Catholics say, "Father, you're not supposed to be political." I don't know where we get that from. It's not in church teaching, never has been. If you look, there's hundreds and hundreds of church documents that speak actually the opposite, that we have a responsibility, we have an obligation to be involved in the political arena. In other words, to let our voice as the church of Christ to be heard. Jesus says, "You are the salt of the earth and the light of the world." No one lights a lamp and then puts the bushel basket over it. We are to shine as Catholics, as Christians, as disciples of Jesus Christ. We were created through baptism to shine and to make a difference in our world. And boy, do we need light today. Look at our nation. It continues to plummet more and more into spiritual darkness. We need the voice of truth. We need Catholics, men and women, Christians, who are willing to be that light, that voice. Jesus in today's gospel is being political. Look at the question put to him. Now they're trying to set him up. He's not stupid. They don't know who they're dealing with. They're dealing with God. God sees right through us. And so they say, "Hey, Jesus, tell us. Are you voting Democrat or Republican?" No, he didn't say that, did he? Say, "Oh, I'm sorry." But people try to set you up, don't they? People do that with me. "Father Mark, what party do you belong to?" None of your business. So he's asking this question about the census taxes. Should we pay the tax or not? Of course, Israel was under Roman occupation. They had to, by law, pay the taxes. And the Romans put really heavy taxes on the nations they occupied. And the Israelites, the Jews, hated the Romans. They didn't want to pay that. And the other reason they hated them was because Caesar was considered a god. In the Roman world, their emperors, their kings, the Caesar was a god. He was the high priest. There's only one God. And for the Jews, that was totally contrary to their faith. There is only one king and one God. It's God himself. So they really struggle with this. But Jesus, it's a yes or no question, but Jesus, in his wisdom, doesn't answer yes or no, does he? He says, "Well, bring a coin to me. Give me that Roman coin. Give me that coin." And he says, "Okay, whose inscription is on this? Whose image is on this?" And they said, "Well, Caesar." "Well, then give to Caesar what belongs to Caesar. His image is on it, so it belongs to him. Give it to him. But give to God what belongs to God." So here's the question. What is it that belongs to God? You. Every human being, everything belongs to God because God is the creator of all things. And our image, so Jesus is determining ownership by whose image is on that coin. Whose image is on you? The image of God. We were created in the image and likeness of God. We have been impressed upon our souls God's image. And with that being said, we belong to God. We owe our whole lives to God. Not to Caesar. Caesar is just another symbolic term for the government or secular leaders. My allegiance is to both. You and I you could say we have a dual citizenship. We're citizens of heaven because we came from heaven. God created us. And we're citizens of this nation or whatever nation you're from. So we have a dual citizenship. Jesus is saying, well, you have a responsibility to both, but my allegiance to God comes first. So if the government ever asks me to do something that's contrary to my faith in God, I have a moral obligation to obey God over that. especially if it's taken me away from my faith, away from God. Give to Caesar what belongs to Caesar, but to God what belongs to God. That's why I'm going to kind of push some hot buttons with you, okay? I'm going to kind of probe you a little bit. Somebody might get mad at me, but that's okay. So when I hear women say, it's my body, it's my baby, I'll do with it what? That's not true. Even if you're not Christian, your body, my body, and especially as Christians, my body's not my body. St. Paul says we are not our own. 1 Corinthians 6, he says, brothers and sisters, are you not aware that your bodies are temples of the Holy Spirit by virtue of your baptism? And that you are not your own. You have been purchased by a price. Right there. Look at the price. Look at that. He purchased us. Thank God he purchased us. What did he purchase us from? What did he redeem us from? Sin. And the effects of sin, which is what? Eternal damnation, which is another term for hell. I owe everything to him. I'm getting fired up, Angie. I owe everything to him. You owe everything to him. Jesus calls them hypocrites. You know what a hypocrite means? It means an actor on a stage, somebody who's not who they say they are. He calls them hypocrites because they're religious leaders, but he sees right through them. He realizes you look religious, you look like a Pharisee, a Jew, but your lifestyle and your actions prove otherwise. As Catholics, as Christians, we can fall into that trap too. We can be Catholic, but not Catholic. You know, when I see Catholic polls, they say, well, the Catholic polls say that 50% of Catholics, I always just throw that out because who are these Catholics? Who do they poll? Do they practice their faith? Because most Catholics don't. There's hypocrisy in us. There's hypocrisy in me. It just means I'm not practicing what I preach sometimes. I'm working at this. Are you working at it? I'm kind of working at this stuff. It's not easy. I read an article a few months ago. It said that in regard to hot issue, you know, the top issues, moral issues like abortion and gay marriage and euthanasia, that Catholics as a whole, when they vote, they don't vote any different than the rest of our society. That's horrible. In other words, we don't look any different. We're supposed to be the light that shines in the darkness, the salt of the earth. We should be standing out in our world today. And look at the gospel acclamation. It says, shine like the lights in the world as you hold on to the word of life. We have to stand for life, for the protection of life from conception to natural death. How appropriate this gospel is today as we approach election. Some of you have already made up your minds. But I want to say this. I can't tell you how to vote. That's a no-no for a priest. We can't do that. But I can hold up for you what's going on. I can hold up for you, and I must hold up for you the teaching of the faith and let you pray about it, inform your conscience, and then go and vote. But when we vote as Catholics, we have to remember I am first a citizen of heaven before I'm a citizen of this nation. I belong to God. He has purchased me. St. Paul says, when we live and we die, we live and die for the Lord. When we live for the Lord, and when we die, we die. In other words, I'm all in. My allegiance is first and foremost to God. I am first a Catholic before I'm a Republican or a Democrat or libertarian or whatever you are. I am first a Catholic. I heard somebody the other day say it this way. I liked it. They said, I'm first a Christian, then I'm an American, then I'm a Democrat, and it's that. But sometimes we flip that around and we say, no, I'm a Republican, or I'm a Democrat. And by golly, I'm going to vote that way till I go to my grave. I've had Catholics tell me that. I don't care who's running. I'm a proud Democrat, or I'm a proud Republican. And I always tell them, as Catholics, we can't do that. I know we do. But we have to, when we vote, we have to vote with the mind of Christ, with the mind of the church. Always being conscious of, what does this candidate stand for? And what does this one stand for? And not basing it on their personalities or their arrogance or whatever. They're all arrogant. There's corruption on both sides. But sometimes it's hard, isn't it? Because you have two people, you're like, I don't like either one of them, really. But we have to base that decision more on policy than on personalities. Policy. Do these policies of this candidate, do they in any way threaten my faith, my religious liberties, my freedom of speech? And there is a movement in this country on the far left, and its movement is towards socialism. And many of you in here, you're older than me, you know world history better than I do. But I know, I'm 60, I know enough history. And we know the history of full-blown socialism. It's government ownership of everything. Government control. There's a far left movement, and they want to bring this in. Our freedoms are being threatened. Your freedom as a Christian to worship God, your religious liberties are under threat in this election more than ever. So that's why it's important to keep this in mind. You may not be going to church anymore. If a certain movement gets into this church and they take control, you may not see the country you've always known. Look at Facebook and Twitter right now. They're censoring anything that smells of Christianity or of any type of conservative values. I'm not talking political. I'm talking about just anything that smells of anything that's conservative or even Christian. It's getting censored. That's not by accident. Our religious liberties are under threat. We need to take this election like any election, but this one far more serious than ever. And when we go and we vote, if you haven't voted yet, keep in mind who you are and to whom you belong. There's been times in my life, even though I was brought up in a certain political party, there's been times in my life I've voted for the other party because that person was more in line, at least I thought, was with the Catholic teaching. So don't let that pride get in there. That's what I see sometimes. It's our pride. No, I hate those Republicans. I hate those Democrats. Don't just put that to the side for a minute and look at each one of them with the mind of Christ and ask yourself which one is best in line with the church. Which one's going to protect my religious liberties? Which one's going to protect life? And that's when you go, even if you can't stand the person, okay? We won't get into all that, all right? Because we, even right now, looking at you in the pews, our church is divided, right? There's people in here this side, and there's people on this side. And Satan loves division. He loves to divide us and getting us fighting. But if we can hold to the fact that I'm first a Christian before I'm any political party affiliation. Give to Caesar what belongs to Caesar. And give to God what belongs to God. What belongs to God? I belong to God. I owe him my life. I owe him my allegiance. He stood up for me. Look what he did for me and for you. He stood up for me. He didn't have to do that. He stood up for me. And he stood up for you. And now he's asking us, will you stand up for me? What does that mean to say I stand up for Jesus? Jesus says, I am the way, the truth, and the life. In other words, will you stand up for the truth and for life. Because when you do that, you stand up for Jesus. When we vote contrary to that, we reject him. I am not my own. That's why I get upset when I hear Catholics say, who's the church to tell me what to do? I'll do what I want to do. What's that? Who's talking there? Do you hear pride in that? Nobody's going to tell me what to do. I'm going to do what I want to do. Somebody else said that a long time ago before he got booted out of heaven. It was Lucifer. I will not serve. I will be God. I will decide what's right and wrong. We got to stop that and go back to who we are and to whom we belong. We've got to get back to that as Catholics, as Christians. And if we do that, and we stay grounded in that truth, and we allow that to guide us, we're going to be fine. So may God give us all the courage and the wisdom and the clarity to vote this year with the mind of Christ.